Okay.
So, thank you so much to all the attendees, students, and thank you so much, Swapne sir and Preetham sir, BOA and Ragini ma'am for considering me for a talk here and considering me for the coordinator of this PG program. That is something that is very close to my heart. So today we'll be studying about the corneal stains, and it's something that we do daily in the OPD. So I will be talking about most of the basic things and few examples.
सोती हूँ क्या कभी मतलब
Few of the basic examples about the corneal staining. So to begin with, the history allows needs the mention. Mr. Straude in 1888 was the first person and who started use of the fluorescent, followed by almost after 100 years. Then Foster in 1980 described that there could be other stains like Saponin Brilliant Black and Victorian Blue that can be used. So, what are the properties of the ideal stain? Like the properties of the ideal stain is something that is not available, but it is there as every time described in the theory. So, what do we want? We want something that is not pharmacological action, not irritant. It should selectively stain. Like I want to go and stain the center part of the cornea. It should go and stain the central part of the cornea or the periphery or only the conjunctiva medial part. It should be compatible with the other stains. Like I can put 3 4 stains together and it should give me a colorful ocular surface. It should be reversible. Patient should not go home with the red eyes. There should be no interference with the vision, and it should be water soluble. So basically all this is like any ideal stain is like a dream, but at present we don't have any ideal stain which will fulfill all the properties, but we do have certain things which are near to which help in our diagnosis of ocular surface. So we will be talking about this and specifically the first three. So what you should know before you start using a stain, like you go to your OPD and your senior hands or you go ये surface stain करके देख लेना. So you should know before doing that what you should know. So there are certain fundamental things that you should know. And we will be talking majorly about the fluorescent rose bengal and the lissamine green. So amount. Why amount is important? See, it's very simple funda that you should know that our Calde sac, like a conjunctival sac where we put a drop, it has a capacity of 25 to 50 microliters, not more than that. And our tear film is hardly 10 microliters. So, and your single drop of any eye drop that you put, it's much more than the capacity of 70, more than the 50 microliters. So when you put a single eye drop inside your eye, it fills the total cul-de-sac of your eye. So you cannot put 2 drops or 3 drops and you think that it will affect more. So you don't want more, you don't want less. Whenever you are staining, it is basically for the diagnostic purpose and it should be adequate. Adequate is the word. So fluorescein, it has to be only 1 to 2 microliter that we want to use. This is in the quantity amount. Rose Bengal and the Lissamine green, you can be little more free and can use up to 25 to 30 microliters. Then what diluent to be used? If I ask what diluent you all use, I will get various kind of answers from the tear substitute to the distilled water to saline or antibiotics or anesthetics, everything. So ideal preservative, if asked, if you get a chance to use, it is unpreserved normal saline that you should use. If somebody, one of you ask, why can't I use distilled water? See, distilled water is a bit hypoosmolar and it is going to affect your ocular surface more, especially in the dry eyes. So I will not, so it is not recommended that you should use distilled water. Then some people use tear substitute. Problem using a tear substitute is tears when you are staining a dry eye surface and you put any tear substitute which already has a CMC. Basically, it will mask the effect of the dry eye which is already there, and basically you're putting more water inside to diagnose a dry eye, which is not recommended. So even the tear substitute is not very ideal diluent that should be used. Then using an anesthetic drop, okay, when you don't want to change, when you don't want to look for any corneal sensation, it is okay. But if you put a paracaine and then you stay after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and it is again of no use, because anesthetic again is not very good for epithelium. It is epitheliotoxic. The toxic effect will not come immediately as you put a paracaine, but after a certain time, or suppose like 3 4 people examine the same patient in the OPD, it will cause some toxic effects to your epithelium. So in that case, even anesthetic for again and again examining the same patient by multiple doctors, not advised. So unpreserved normal saline is ideal diluent that we all should use when you're using these things. Coming to quantity, this is in the percentage, like ideally again we should have a dropper basically, which we should be able to put inside a conjunctival phonics, but we don't have. What we use is a strips, okay, and those strips are but loaded with a particular amount of a stain already. So I have written that this strip of the fluorescein is zero point 0.6 to 1 milligram. Rose Bengal is 1.3, Lizamine green is 1 to 1.5 milligram, and the percentage is also mentioned here. So what we are using, we should know how much percentage we are actually using. Technique, I will come to the technique when we show you the few videos that how you should stain the ocular surface. Now, when you should examine fluorescein, once you put the staining, you should examine immediately. Like, don't do that. So you tell your optometrist, or you tell one of your colleague that you stain and then I will see, and then you go and see after 5 minutes. The whole effect that you are supposed to see, you will not be able to actually get it into it. So the findings of your colleague and your will be totally different. So when you put a fluorescent, try to examine as early as possible within a minute. Rose Bengal and the Lizamine green gives you a bit of a time, because the staining properties of the Rose Bengal and the Lizamine green are completely different than the fluorescent. They go and stain the basically dead cells, or the mucin, or the devitalized cells in a simple word, and they go and stain the nucleus. So even they stay on the surface much longer time than the fluorescent. So they can be examined ideally after 1 to 2 minutes of the staining. How do you examine? Again, as a slit lamp, like we studied in our last lecture, that it has a different filters, and fluorescent ideally you can either see with the blue, or blue with the yellow filter. Rose Bengal white or the red free, and the Lizamine green can be seen with the white filter. And this is very important table, and this is the basic of your any corneal staining. If you are going to use the stains, you should know all the properties of the stain.
Sumit,
Yes,
could you just tell them what is the color of each filter? Because red free. What is the color of red free filter? What is the color of white filter? What is the color of blue filter?
So basically blue and yellow are itself the colors mentioned. White is generally that we use is the yellow light. Red free filter is basically the green filter that we use, because it's basically a contrast, because Rose Bengal is maroon to red in color. So examining it is it's better with the red free, or basically a green filter. And the Lizamine green in color, it can be seen with the white, basically a yellow light of the slit lamp. These are again few properties of dyes that you should know of the stains. So fluorescein, it goes and stains the cytoplasm. Just a minute. Yeah. So fluorescein stains your cytoplasm, and it basically takes the stain very quickly, because it goes and stains your tear film. Rose Bengal on the Lizamine green on the other hand, they go and stain your nucleus, and as I said, they stay for more longer time. Fluorescein, again as described, it's more transient compared to the rest too. And the conjunctival staining, you should know that conjunctiva epithelium is much more different than the corneal epithelium. Corneal epithelium is very snugly adhered to each other, but considering conjunctival junctions, they are not so strong, and the diffusion of any dye through the conjunctiva is much more faster then it happens through the cornea. So what is this I'm trying to show? This is the same example that I gave you, that you tell your colleague that you please stain, and then I will see after a while, or in other way around, that you tell your junior that who has joined just now that go and stain. The junior will say that sir, the whole cornea got stained and I think there is large 9 mm epithelial defect. Then like patient is not having any symptom, then you go and check, then suddenly you see there are multiple erosions in the inferior part and nothing happened to the patient. Like first somebody else saw, then you saw, A person and B person, same cornea, nothing else done, same stain, and this is what the result is. So what happened here? This is nothing but excess of stain, and this is an adequate stain. What happened that instead of this has been stained by somebody who is not trained, don't know how much fluorescein to be put in the sac, and they put excess of the fluorescein, and it basically disperses over a whole of the corneal surface, giving you the wrong finding. Secondly, masking the true finding. So adequate stain is very important when you want to see a corneal surface. So this is too much of dye. Now this is what? This is again same thing, that you tried to see a surface. Again your optometrist stained for you. Basically you wanted to see a dendrite, but after a while what happened? The whole dye diffused inside and you got something confluent picture like this. You missed the actual thing that you were supposed to see and you got something else only. Again, what is this? This is nothing but too much delay in examining the patient. So there is heavy OPD and somebody else is examining the patient, and then it is coming to you after 10 minutes when somebody already has stained, and then you want to see the picture. You are basically missing the finding. Now this phenomenon is very important one to know. Okay, and this will explain why rest of the two things happen and why the adequate dye is important. So this is a very simple, nice bell-shaped curve, okay, like a Gaussian curve. What is this telling you? This is telling you a very simple thing, that whenever you are using any dye, any stain, and you want to gain maximum out of it, basically maximum fluorescence out of it, you need to put it in an adequate amount or adequate percentage. You cannot put either less or either more. Less, you know what will happen? If the less staining, it will not go and stain the actual surface. And even if you put into the minimal quantity, like you say that instead of putting a 1%, I will put 0.01%. So what will happen? There will be no fluorescence. Why? Because there are no fluoropores. Fluoropores are basically molecules inside the fluorescent stain which basically emit the high fluorescence light. So that will not be there when you put a very less quantity. So that will be a dilute regime. What will happen if you put excess of it? If you put excess of it, what will happen is interference pattern will be there. Like I showed you in the previous corneal picture, lot of stain, basically it emits so much of fluorescence that you don't see what you were supposed to see. So that is known as a quenching regime. That is known as a quenching regime. So you don't want to fall in either one of them. You want to fall in the adequate one, which is 0.1 to 0.2%. Now I told you for the fluorescence specifically that the strip that we are using is almost 2%, but we want to come to this golden number of 0.1 to 0.2%. How can we do that? It's very simple. Like I told you, any tear film normal has a 10 microliter of the volume, and you just try to put a 1 microliter of your 2% fluorescence. You don't put more, you don't put less. This will give you almost 0.2%. Now how to achieve this, that also I will tell you, but this is the theoretical calculation behind all the practical activities that we do. So fluorescence stain, I just want you to understand that this is a dye basic one, and it absorbs at the 493 nanometers and it emits at the 520 nanometers. Now try and understand this. This is what happens, that when you are staining it, you stain with the dye and it forms a layer on your ocular surface. Then you put a light, okay, and light has all the wavelengths available. Then you say that I will put a blue color filter inside. Okay, what will happen because of that? What this, see, as I told you, this fluorescent is going to absorb a certain spectrum of the light. What spectrum of the light? That is 465 to 490 nanometers. That is 465 to 490 nanometers. So we don't want to put all the light there and get the reflection from or the ocular surface. We want to concentrate on that millimeter on the cornea, which I'm interested in seeing. So for that, I use a filter which will absorb rest of the light and only allow 410 to 500 nanometer to pass through. Okay, what I get this kind of a spectrum. Okay, now what is happening? See, this reflection that is happening, it is of whole 520 to 530 nanometer. Okay, and above everything is being reflected. So what do I get with this blue filter? I get a dark green color light. Again, am I getting a good picture? Of course, I'm getting a good picture, but can it be made better? So nowadays, to make it better, there is one more filter that we use, which is known as a Ratten 12 filter. Ratten 12 filter. What does Ratten 12 filter do? Ratten 12 filter allows light which is only above 510 nanometer. मतलब आप क्या कर रहे हो? मतलब you are just sending all the light which is less than 500 so that you fall into the proper absorption spectrum, and you are putting a filter so that only above 510 nanometer light can be seen. So you get a very good fluorescence out of that. So how do you see this? See, this is the one that I am trying to tell you. This is the yellow filter. In new slit lamps, it is already incorporated. Otherwise, you get it like a 90D lens, which you can keep in front of your slit lamp and see through it. What is the benefit of this? So I will show you through one example. Now see this. This is the same surface. On the left hand side, what you are seeing, this conjunctiva is with the blue filter, and this is with the yellow filter. So all these small stains, especially in the circle, these small dots, okay, like what we say is a punctate staining of the conjunctiva, is totally missed in this part. See, it is totally missed in this filter, but you can very well see this. So this yellow filter, when it is effective, it is very effective when with the fluorescent you want to examine a conjunctival surface. With the fluorescent stain, you want to examine a conjunctival surface, the yellow filter scores much above than your blue filter. But on the cornea, blue filter is sufficient. But for the surface, the fluorescent is the best with the yellow filter. Now moving ahead again, coming to a bit of a theoretical part. This is what I am trying to talk about. Epithelium is generally impermeable to the tear film. So you put a fluorescent and it will wash off after a while. Nothing will go inside, ideally. Now what happens? What happens is this junctions. There are three important things that I want here all of you to understand. First is here glycocalyx. Second is a tight junction, and third is a gap junction. Okay. Now this glycocalyx, basically it's a very characteristic like you can say microvilli which are there on the surface epithelium, or in the very simple language, the most superficial epithelium of the cornea. What do they do? As you know, tear film is made up of three layers: mucin, aqueous, and the lipid. Holding the mucin on the place is a function of the glycocalyx. So when the glycocalyx is not there, of course, mucin will not be very much adherent, hence the tear film will be disturbed. And this disturbed tear film can be very well seen with your stains. So whenever glycocalyx is not there, you will be able to stain the epithelium. So basically, this is a impermeable layer 1. Then again, there are tight junction between two epithelium. So whenever there is some injury, some trauma or anything that your tight junction are disturbed, or maybe because of the dry eye or maybe toxicity to the drug, when they are disturbed, your fluorescent is going to percolate, or in a simple word, can diffuse down and can start staining the lower surface, can start staining the posterior surface, epithelium 2, 3, 4, and then your basement membrane. So it diffuses rapidly when the epithelium is breached. Otherwise, epithelium does not allow fluorescein or any other dye to go through it. But once it diffuses, it can diffuse and go till your aqueous humor also. So this is very classical way of understanding it. Okay, this is, if you understand this diagram, you will never have question that why this kind of a staining is happening. See, this is what the normal epithelium I am trying to tell you. Now you know corneal epithelium keeps getting replaced and the new epithelium is formed. How does this new epithelium come? New epithelium come from the basal cells. Basal cells. Okay. Now these basal cells, they move through this, you can say hierarchy. It goes up and it matures into a surface epithelial cell. These basal cells are coming basically from the limbal stem cells which are at the limbus. Now, this epithelial cell, what is it so different than the basal cell? Very important, like I told you, it is a different, it's a flat cell and it has this glycocalyx-like structure, which is not there on the basal cell. So in the routine apoptosis, which body has planned that a superficial epithelium chala jayega and the new layer will come. So it will send a layer along with the glycocalyx and again it will start holding the mucin and you will not have any staining here. You might get pooling. You might get pooling here, but you will not get any staining. Okay. Then coming to the next. What happens when this disease process is bit rapid? This disease process is rapid and suddenly the epithelium is washing away like it happens in the recurrent corneal erosion. It washing off and the new epithelium is coming up and which is not like a mature epithelium or without glycocalyx, then you do get staining here. Then you do get staining in that part of the cell where is a defect. Now it happens as a disease process like this. Okay. Then what will happen? Then this will diffuse further, like from the first epithelial layer, it will go to the second. So this is called as a diffusion. And when there is a total defect, or maybe because of the trauma or some other disease pathology, this goes down and this percolates totally till the basement membrane, and this will present as a epithelial defect. This will present as a epithelial defect. Okay. So this diagram is very important. So the left hand side is showing you physiology, the right hand side is showing you pathology. So these are the four important lesions. Why I have put this slide very separately, that these are the most common lesions that we come across day-to-day life and we tend to miss it or we tend to call them by each other's name. This is like the twins have been called by each other's name. Same thing happens to this. So I want all of you to understand very well this clinical pictures. So the very first I am showing you, there are very small dots like pinheads kind of a dots that you see. Okay, they are away from each other, separated with the clear zone. Then you see in the second picture that these dots or the pinheads are little larger compared to the first one. Okay, and what are these basically? The first one is superficial punctate keratitis and second one is punctate epithelial erosions. Okay, both of them are depressions in the epithelium because they are taking stain. Okay, the epithelium or the glycocalyx there, the superficial layer is affected. So the to start with, it start as a superficial punctate keratitis. You don't treat it, it will convert into the punctate epithelial erosion. Very important. Okay, the size of the PE is much more than the SPKs. Now what next? Next is punctate epithelial keratitis. This is like a starry sky kind of appearance you are seeing because of the beautiful yellow filter picture. These are basically same as the punctate epithelial erosions, but the important thing is they are not depressions in the epithelium. They are basically elevations. They are basically elevations. So if I draw epithelium and this is a superficial punctate keratitis, this is punctate epithelial erosion. The punctate epithelial keratitis will be elevation. It is like a hypertrophic epithelium, you can say. This is very common picture that you see. Where do you see it? You see it in adenoviral conjunctivitis. Adenoviral conjunctivitis, the patients which keep coming to you with it's basically a follicular conjunctivitis. If you examine their cornea, you will see nothing but a punctate epithelial keratitis, and this is another common feature of, and you can see in a way very much characteristic of microsporidial keratitis, microsporidial keratitis. Okay, so these are punctate epithelial keratitis. How do you differentiate? You will say कि ये तो same ही दिख रहा है, PE type. Very simple. You put a slit beam, and on the slit beam you will see that this part is basically elevated and these parts are basically depressed. So this is very important difference between them. What is this? Again, this is very simple. This is like a progress stage of everything. This is nothing but a epithelial defect. This is nothing but a epithelial defect. So you need to understand that there are superficial punctate keratitis, punctate epithelial erosion. There are depressions in the epithelium, punctate epithelial keratitis, which happens in adenoviral or in the microsporidial keratitis, and these are elevations and epithelial defect when all the epithelium is gone when you don't treat of this condition. So these are basically uses of the fluorescein that I want to highlight, and this again you should know that where you can use it. This is I am not put the yellow light picture, but this is basically infiltrate, or you can say corneal ulcer with the stromal infiltration and the epithelial defect. So this can be very well stained. What is this? This, if you see, what you need to see is this flow. Okay, and this is nothing but a Seidel test, and this is showing you the leaking bleb. So sorry, this is showing you the leaking bleb. So when the Seidel test is done, you do it to understand any of the leakage of your either surgery or otherwise. So I want to tell you very important point. How do you do Seidel test? A Seidel test is not like you put a fluorescein and put it into the lower fornix and then you check that what is happening. No, Seidel test, you go and touch the fluorescein generally. It is little different than how do you do it for your surface staining. Here, you know which part to be examined. So if the trap is done, you know there is a bleb form. You just need to go and touch your fluorescent strip there, and you will be able to see if there is a leakage, the flow like this. Similarly, if you do a keratoplasty tomorrow, you're not sure that between 6 to 7 o'clock there is leakage or not, why the AC is not formed. You go and touch at the graft versus junction, you will see the leaking. That's how you do a Seidel test. Okay. Nowadays, LVPI group has also shown the use of the fluorescein to see your lacrimal gland ductules and even your small minor salivary gland openings also. Okay. So fluorescein has multiple uses, and the Seidel test is very important test that can be done to see the leakage through your after your surgery. Now
Also,
this is the
Sumit,
yes sir.
yeah, the NN group has also used fluorescein to show how much is the spraying during the surgery while we are doing phacoemulsification or we are doing NCT in the COVID
Yeah.
era.
Yeah.
So that's
So
the
ocular surface stress measurement is also done with the fluorescein. It can be in general done when you do a lot of workup for a patient in the OPD, and then you stain in the end. And as I told you to see, it will always take a stain. The same thing happens in the surgery is that your eye is open and sometimes the saline is not put, visco is not put, and the surface does get dry. The patient next day complains, I am having pain, redness. It is not maybe because of your surgery, it's basically because of the surface is hampered. So again, this is very classically filament shown, and please dry eyes. This is basically to highlight your tear film height. Okay. And this is basically how do you check for your tear breakup time. For the Sharma test, again, it is useful. This is in cases of chemical injury, you see this kind of a picture to know where exactly your epithelial defect is. Then, yeah, going again, Seidel test picture is repeat here. Then this is basically post LASIK. If this you would have identified as a spotter, this is nothing but the epithelial ingrowth. Okay, epithelial ingrowth that happens below your flap and at the interface. So in this also you can do fluorescein staining basically to know that is there any leaking tract between the interface and your surface. So you know that from where the basically this epithelial cells are migrating inside, and that will give you indication that you might have to operate, lift the flap and operate this patient. Now this picture basically I will come to this picture again, but just see properly that you see there are folds here. So you see a staining, and then you see a black part, which is basically a negative staining. Okay, this is basically a negative staining. When the negative staining will happen, very simple. As I told you, when the part is very much elevated and you try to take fluorescein and try to see this part, what will happen is fluorescein will wash off from that area and it will stain the periphery, and it will the lesion will become black, or this is called as a negative staining. So this is basically a fold in the LASIK slab. This is basically fold in the LASIK slab. As you know, the cornea is folded and you try to stain, what will happen? The elevated part will show a negative staining. This again could be spotter for you. This is nothing but the use of fluorescein for angiography. This is iris, mind you, not retina. This is what you do most commonly. Again, applanation tonometry. This is what you do when you fit a contact lens to understand that how is the fitting. Then these are some non-surface uses, but they are again important to complete the topic. You should know that you are doing a Jones dye test for your planning of a DCR. Again, you use fluorescein, or sometimes in the children to know that NLDO, you do a FDDT. Okay, fluorescein dye disappearance test. Again, you use the same thing. This when you have a trauma and there is a canalicular tear, sometimes you don't find the distal canalicular opening and you want to find put the stent. What do? You do is you put a stain through the another opening, another punctum, and then you will be able to find the lost opening of the tear. That will easier way to find out your canaliculus. Now this again I am trying to highlight the negative staining here. Okay, see, this patient came to me with the diagnosis was pseudophakic villus keratopathy, and she was having a lot of pain. And when I saw the picture only with the normal yellow light, I could not see anything. But this part was telling me that there is something abnormal in this patient. So when I see with the filter, I do see that this part is elevated and this part is a negative staining, and basically the surrounding zone is basically pulled the dye. This is pulled the dye, and this is a negative staining telling me that this is a small irregular bulla that has happened in the periphery, and that is what is bothering the patient. So this is a negative staining example. One more negative staining example. This again is a bit difficult to understand in the first year, but slowly you will be seeing such kind of patient. Like I told you, these are the folds in the LASIK flap. So of course there are folds in the whole of the corneal surface, so you will get a negative staining. Here you will not get what this horizontal line that you are showing. These are basically striae. Striae are inside the LASIK flap. So this is not abnormality of the surface. This is inside the flap. So on the staining, you will not see the negative ideal staining that you get on the fold. So to differentiate between them, the fluorescein is very ideal way to know that are you dealing with the folds or the striae. Then these are very simple things that again you should know. They're very classical dictums. Okay, this is what you should get on the regular cornea. This you see a oblong kind of a thing, you know you're dealing with the astigmatic cornea, and you know your applanation tonometry is not good when you have a highly astigmatic cornea like more than 3.5 cylinder and all. If you get this kind of a thick bulky Myers, you know what you have done is instead of putting a minimal dye, you have put more of a dye. You get such thin and slim Myers, you know you have put minimal dye. What you can do in such a case is basically instead of using any tear substitute or any anesthetic, what you can do simply is you can use patient's own tear film, okay, and stain the surface with that after putting fluorescein. So you get a very good and adequate kind of a Meyer there. Again, this a very simple thing that I want you to understand, that when you do a contact lens fitting, what do you see? See, it's basically you should have an optimum fit like this, okay, where it is not causing any damage to the ocular surface. Now see, it's very simple funda. ये cornea है, okay, और ये cornea पे you put a contact lens which is like a flat, ओके फ्लैट कॉन्टैक्ट लेंस देख 43 डायप्टर पे 38 डायप्टर का कॉन्टैक्ट लेंस डालने जैसा है. It's like I'm just simplifying for your sake of understanding. What will happen? This will just go and attach to the center of the cornea. Okay, ये यहाँ पे चिपक जाएगा इसको. But the periphery is empty. Now what will happen? Now when you put a stain, it will go and lodge in this area. Your stain will lodge in this area, okay, where the contact lens is not touching. So what do you get? So here in the center you get a black part. Black part, why? Because the contact lens is touching the cornea, it is not allowing fluorescein to diffuse there. Okay, correct. And in the periphery you get this large rim. You get this large rim. Okay, so this is when this you see that in the periphery there is large green. Like to just to oversimplify it, periphery large green is too flat. Okay, and what will happen in the two step? Again, two step may it will go and very snugly fit in your periphery of the cornea, while the center will be very much open. So your fluorescein will go here somewhere in the center, and you will see a large green spot, a large green staining basically in the center. So again, just to simplify for you, you need to understand. Steep will be a central green and the flat will be central black. Understand the physiology behind it and the mechanism behind it, then you will be able to know that what kind of a contact lens fitting patient is actually using. What not to do in the staining is very important. Like I told you what is to be done, but what not to be done is again very important. Okay, so see this, what is happening here is you're using a tear substitute. Like I told you, it is not ideal thing to be used. Secondly, you see this small video here, okay, uh, and when you put so much of tear substitutes, it's actually falling there on the table, and then you try to put, what you are going to get is a very green picture, a green eye instead of finding anything, and then you will be like पूरे cornea पे epithelial defect है. That is not the picture. Your staining way is wrong. And of course this thing that you all should avoid, that many times patients do come to you with white clothes or something, and you don't want to send them back with the stained clothes. They will not be very happy going home like that. Now see, this is another video, and this is the most disastrous way of trying to stain an ocular surface. When you are sitting far away from the patient and you are not getting how to stain, and you are basically rubbing your fluorescent strip on the patient's eye, this is going to not give you any yield out of your procedure, and patient is again going to be uncomfortable. So this is the wrong way of doing it. Okay, then how do you do it actually? Okay, so you just put a very single drop always. Then as a tip, just try to put it beyond your this is your fluorescein. Okay, try to put a millimeter behind that, so then you don't get a large blob. Okay, and then if you get an extra drop, just shake your hand very gently so that the excess of the water falls off, and then you are left with only part of the fluorescein, and you just go and touch the surface. That's it. You just go and touch the surface, nothing else of the lower warning. This is the ideal way you should stain a surface. That's it. And then you can tell the patient to blink, and the tear film will spread the entire fluorescein that you have put in the patient's eye. I hope this is clear. Now coming to the rose Bengal dye, again we have covered most of the things about it. I want to highlight two things here, that it basically stains your dead cells and the devitalized cells, first thing. Okay, and it basically goes and binds to specific cell component, which is nothing but the nucleus here. Okay, problem with that, it has its antiviral activity, and because of that antiviral activity, many of the times when you are suspecting specific viral keratitis or any other keratitis, they do not advise to start staining with the rose bengal even before you take your scraping or the other thing. Again, it is very as I told you, vital stain which stains the devitalized cells, okay, and the mucin. then when you will first time use a rose bengal, you will find that it is very difficult. Like you are so used to using the fluorescent that you will find it is very difficult to stain with the rose bengal because the surface is not taking stain. So what we generally do is we take two rose bengal strips, okay, wet them with the normal saline, and we rub the color ends to each other, the dye ends to each other, and after that we put a small drop in the eye. So basically that is a very effective medium, and then tell the patient to keep the eye closed for a minute at least, and after that you examine. Don't be in the hurry to examine the patient and try to see the findings, especially when you are using the rose bengal and the lissamine green. Again, rose bengal is a bit irritant dye, okay, and it is irritating. It stains the eyelid, contact lenses, and fingers. Of course, uses, you can see here, okay, this is the ulcer, and it basically staining the margins of the ulcer here. Here it is staining the conjunctival surface, okay, inferior part of the conjunctival surface. This is basically a contact lens user, okay, and again, as I told you, the patient is using two strip of a contact lens. What happens with the two strip of the contact lens? It goes and adheres to the periphery of the cornea too much, and this part of the cornea is in the stress, and you get lot of devitalized epithelium here. So you get this kind of a picture in such cases. This is just staining a pterygium, and this part, this raspberry looking like part, is nothing but a OSSN, ocular surface squamous neoplasia. OSSN characteristically produces keratin over the surface, and keratin is very well stained with your rose bengal. Okay, it is very well stained with your rose bengal, and it's the most commonly used stain to stain your keratin. So for your ocular tumor, especially OSSN, rose bengal is the stain of choice at present. Lissamine green, again, you can think it's a green substitute for the rose bengal. But if you give me a choice that will you use the rose bengal or the lissamine green, if you want to see a conjunctival surface, I will vote myself for the lissamine green compared to the rose bengal, cause of its antiviral activity, cause of its irritant nature, cause of difficulty in seeing, and lot of things. The lissamine green, of course, scores much above the rose bengal for seeing a conjunctival surface. Again, mind you, this basically both these stains are used to see for your conjunctival surface. Like you get a patient with the Sjogren syndrome, you get a Steven Johnson syndrome, or cicatricial pemphigoid. The lissamine green and the rose bengal staining will be a much better way to stain in such cases. So these are a few examples that what do you expect when you see this. See, this is entire surface staining with the lissamine green. Okay, here I am trying to show you something known as a conjunctival callosis. It's a conjunctival fold which happens in the old age, and the tear film basically is disturbed here totally because of this. And whenever patient blinks, it basically gives a pain because of the conjunctiva comes in between. So same staining when we did with the lissamine green, it gives you a all these devitalized cells over here because this fold keeps getting injured because of the eyelid margin, and the cells here are affected. Now just to complete the talk, I have added all these three: Alcian blue, thymol blue, and trypan blue. Trypan blue is all of you are familiar with it. This is something that we use in our cataract surgery and the retinal surgery, but this can very well be used in cases of ocular surface also, and this selectively stains again a dead tissue. This is again very effective even to stain your ocular surface squamous neoplasia. Bromothymol blue, which is something that is again we don't use generally. Again, it is for the degenerated and the dead cells. And Alcian blue, okay, this is a counter staining of the rose bengal. This is basically to like you can say enhance the effect of the rose bengal. In addition, it stains the dead cells and the mucin. Okay, and this is again the grading that all of you should know, but this is basically whenever you are looking for a dry eye or a dry ocular surface that has been affected, this kind of a scales, and there are multiple more scales that can those are available that can be used. The basic principle of all the scales is they divide the ocular surface into parts. Like you can do it on your own also, but then there are validated score. So you give 3 points to the medial conjunctiva, 3 to temporal, and then 3 to the surface of the cornea. And as per the staining, then you basically give a score. And basically, this is a objective way of knowing how is your ocular surface. So to conclude, the stains are very important for your ocular surface diagnosis, and you might miss the important findings without staining. So though you don't do it as a routine examination, but whenever patient is giving you complaints which are not able to understand, or pain that is not shown on the simple slit lamp examination without any clinical signs, it is better that in such cases you always stain. Corneal lesion enhancement is what is the role of your corneal stain. Fluorescein with the yellow filter works well for the conjunctiva. So if you don't have a Lissamine green, you don't have a rose bengal, or not able to stain with it, not able to appreciate the finding, but you have a yellow filter and you try to examine it with the fluorescein and the yellow filter, then you will of course see a very good conjunctival surface, which is as appreciable as your Lissamine green staining. And very important thing is use adequately, no excess and not in a less, and interpret wisely, which is most important take home point whenever using corneal stains. I thank you all for your patient listening.
Thank you, Sumit. That was a very lucid talk and very pertinent points brought up by you, which will help the first year residents to learn the actual art of slit lamp examination and corneal staining. So, any questions? If the PGs can have, they can unmute themselves or type the question in the chat box. In the meanwhile, we can also take the polls.
Yeah. Should I stop sharing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of you just need to answer the question which were.
So these were the points which were discussed by Sumit, and these are the two questions. Let's see how many of you get it right. I request all the students to answer these questions. Go in your poll section and start typing.
We start typing an answer because we don't know who is answering what. We just know that so many people have answered something.
So Sumit, this is a tricky question. When should you actually examine the patient? After you stain with fluorescein. So you have to give a bit of more clarification regarding that, because there are plus and minuses of the timing, early timing, late timing. What is ideal, that you will please clarify again for the students.
Okay.
Also in the video, I think if you have noted, while you are staining the conjunctival sac of the patient, please don't touch the mask of the patient or use a glove while doing it.
Yes.
That's very important. So best is to stand next to the patient, and it's more controlled rather than sitting behind a slit lamp. You may inadvertently touch the mask of the patient.
And people are still waiting.
Yes, almost I think 75% of them have already answered. So let's discuss this.
Okay.
61% people have answered immediately. We should examine the patient immediately after staining with the fluorescein. And absorption spectrum, I think most of them have got it right. It is 460 to 480.
So the absorption spectrum answer is something that is factual. 460 to 490. We had put option a bit changing the values, but the answer is C, 460 to 480. Now, talking about when should you examine again. See, examination, as I told you, you follow a dictum, stain it yourself. Okay. And you stain it yourself. Don't tell anyone else to stain for you, because you know how to stain exactly and what lesion you are expecting to see. So somebody else is just doing it for you. It might turn wrong. So, and after staining, as I told you, you need to see certain vital clinical features. Let it be a tear film height, or before the diffusion of your fluorescein, you want to see the small epithelial defect or P's. In such cases, it is ideal that you see immediately. You don't wait for 1 minute or 5 minutes. Again, 30 seconds was given to confuse you all, but not to misunderstand that you wait until 30 seconds. 30 seconds is lot of time for the diffusion of the stain. So once you tell the patient to blink once, immediately you can start examining the patient, because in one blink, whole of the tear film must have got stained with your fluorescein, and the ideal wherever there was a lesion, it has been taken by that lesion immediately. So if you see after 1 minute, 5 minutes, it will be not of much of high yield, and what you will see is a diffuse picture of a diffuse fluorescein, and you may not be able to even understand where was the epithelial defect, and is it P or something else that you are looking after. So immediately is something that we will go with, and 460 to 480.
And it
I hope.
also, I think, is it important not to have too bright a light to shine on, because that will again startle the patient, and the patient will immediately be uncooperative and will lose the important time to see the findings. So maybe start from lower, not the lowermost, but lower end of the brightness of the illumination, and then slowly increase the slit lamp light.
So that's a very good thing, sir, that when you're using your normal yellow light, it's very important that you start with the minimal illumination and then slowly you increase. But when you are seeing a stain, especially fluorescent and with the blue filter, you try to use the maximum illumination in that case, because that is not going to affect the patient. That is very important point. Again, so seeing with the filter, you need to use the brightest illumination possible, but when you're using like without stain, you're examining a corneal surface, making the patient put the chin on the slit lamp. Don't use very bright illumination, because especially whenever patient is coming with a dry eye or any ocular surface disease, they will not be very comfortable. So in such cases, as sir said, that you start with the minimal illumination and slowly increase the illumination.
We have one query in the chat. Sir, can you please explain negative staining on?
Retinal surfaces. That's what you.
So that's beyond the purview of this topic, but negative staining on the retinal surface means that suppose you have a patient of ERM, and suppose you have a patient of macular hole. In both the cases, we do a vitrectomy and we put a retiblue dye or any dye which stains. You can use a ICG dye also. So we will talk only about the retiblue dye. So that you are putting it on the posterior pole. In a case of a macular hole, because there is no second membrane on top of ILM, the entire ILM barring the macular hole, a full thickness macular hole, will get stained. Now, suppose you have a ERM and you are putting the trypan blue or the retiblue on top of it, then what you will actually get is the ERM part of it will not be stained, but the surrounding ILM, which is not covered by the ERM, that gets stained. So here the ERM is negatively stained. So as surgeons, what we do is many a times we are not interested in just removing the ERM, because there could be certain tentacles or extensions of the ERM which are extended in the neighboring ILM, which have a potential of reproliferating. So we do it exactly like a macular hole surgery, but the peeling is done from beyond the edge of the ERM. So we remove the ILM, and obviously with the ILM, the entire ERM also lifts up. Now suppose if it is difficult for whatever reason for the ILM to be lifted along with ERM, then we remove the ERM, restain, and then remove the ILM. Of course, removing the ILM is not a must, but that is what we practice with better knowledge and better instrumentation and better experience. So beginners might probably just remove the ERM and stop over there, but given a chance, always at least attempt to remove ILM below the ERM so that it leaves behind lesser scaffold for the reproliferation to take place. So that's negative staining in retinal surface. Okay, so I think we can end here
Yes, sir.
if there are no other questions.
Any queries you can there is a group, there is a YouTube video, you can put in comments or you can put it in the group. We are happy to answer your queries anytime. So thank you,
Okay.
Swapnesh sir, and thank you everyone for being present.
What's the next lecture for the PGs?
Just a minute. I forgot. Next is retina examination and documentation by Dr. Ashish Jain on 27th of October.
That's next Tuesday.
Yeah, that's next Tuesday.
I request all of you PGs to please put this program up in your friends groups beyond Mumbai, beyond Maharashtra. We want more participation and more of you to get involved in this PG lecture series. Send your suggestions. Send your BOA membership forms. You can see it on the BOA website www.boamumbai.com. Fill the print, take a printout, fill the form, and send the actual hard copies with the check to the secretary's office. And yes, subscribe to our channel BOA iTalk Plugged In. It's on the YouTube. There are already 1300 subscribed people who are taking advantage of all the past 50 videos. So it's a good reference library for all of you. So with that, we'll sign off. Thank you, Sumit,
Thank
and
you,
have
sir.
a good evening.
Yes.